So in my previous video, I showed a short clip of the gear I was wearing, and there is one huge mistake in this clip. A lot of people are talking about, imprinting aspects and not replacing the weapon due to your damage. And a lot of us have suggested you should place your aspects on things that you're not going to be replacing all that often. However, what I realized later on is that you can't even do that for most classes as well, and you should only stick to the jewelry for the most part, and even then that might be a mistake as well. Now right here is a perfect example when I showcase World Tier 4. It really depends on how strong your aspects are and whether or not that's a game-changing feature of your build. But right here you can see my crossbow has a base stat of 25.3% vulnerable damage. For those of you that don't know, that is additive on your normal vulnerable damage. So if you have like 20%, it's going to increase. That amount is increasing, but it's actually multiplicative towards every other damage type, which means that vulnerable damage is one of the most important ones. And for rogues specifically, you can get that on your crossbow. Now, for those of you that also don't know, every single piece of gear that you have equipped, whether or not you're using it, especially for you barbarians out there, is going to provide you stats towards your character. So that means that even though you may not be using your damage per second on the actual individual weapon for your skills, these stats contribute to your overall damage. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made is, you could see here, this is actually a level 37 crossbow, and I imprinted the Edge Masters aspect onto it because that really helps me deal way more damage to bosses. However, I can actually get more damage out of this weapon instead of just having an aspect on here by increasing my vulnerable damage and my other stats associated with it. Because you can see here, just picking up a random ancestral bow that took me literally seconds to go ahead and enter into World Tier 4, which I showcased in my previous video, I can get massive stat increasing. And if that's stats, which I did skip out on early on, were things like close damage, vulnerable damage, poison damage, or anything like that, I'm actually going to get more damage from getting the proper stats on my gear pieces or on my amulets than I would have with, let's say, the aspect itself. Now popping over to max roll, as you see here, since I did not play a barbarian, but a barbarian has multiple weapons to access. And you can see some of their core stats are like critical strike damage, or you can get just straight up damage on your two-hander. You can get critical strike damage, core skill damage, vulnerable damage. All these stats contribute to your build. And so even though you could imprint an aspect, and the barbarian has very, very good aspects, there are some cases where just getting a better weapon, regardless of you not using it, let's say, I don't know, let's say you say whirlwind build, you're gonna run a two-hander, it doesn't matter, you can run two-hander, you can run a two-handed mace, two-handed sword, whatever it is you want to run in your build, you want to upgrade your single-handed weapons in order for you to just get more stats to contribute to your whirlwind rather than just sit on that aspect. The value between constantly replacing your aspect or even potentially even sitting on your aspect, that is way, way less valuable, even if it's a piece of gear that you're not using that's core to your damage. I've seen a lot of people talk about how you should not be placing an aspect on one of your weapons so that you can replace it super frequently, but not anyone has spoken about how important it is to keep up your secondary gear pieces regardless of you not potentially using them in your main combat. And I wanted to make that very, very clear because every single piece of gear contributes to your main stat pool, and if you make this mistake, you're going to be so much slower in everything that you do. Hopefully that helps, guys. I'll see you for the next one.